Welcome to the Art Center on a Monday evening, still quite beautiful. You are the first viewers of the exhibit Corpus by Noller and Jay Noller and Greg Goodworth. Well, I don't hear the difference between Craig and Craig, so forgive me. I'm a foreigner. And so I'm very happy to see you here. It is an experimental exhibit for us. Last week we had 4 people working in the space, and this time around we have 2 people who have worked towards this exhibit, but it is an exhibit that still will morph over time. So I still feel it is part of the series Artists at Work. So Jay, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became an artist, how you view yourself as an artist, because you have a double occupation.
Yeah, double personality.
I wasn't going to go there.
So art for me really started at my father's direction. He's an artist and a rocket engineer, so to speak, rocket scientist. And so I've kind of patterned that life in the sense of doing art. It's very important to me, and it has been important. And this exhibit is a way to really revisit a revitalization of my art, and where I really see myself as an artist. It's the playa. So you'll be seeing visions here, and I'll talk about it over here. And then my other life is as department head of a very large agricultural department at OSU, crop and soil science, and I travel around dealing with the major commodities, grass seed, etc., and soils and bugs and small farms and organic ag, non-organic ag. It's full suite. So art is really something that was part of growing up. And I had training in college until I decided that I probably wasn't going to make money as an artist. I needed to find a pursuit, and that's when I went into geology, and here I am. So.
Craig, basically the same question. How did this happen? That you're a practicing artist?
I suppose I came late to it. I didn't grow up with that much art. I left high school and played football, and after some of that, I went to art school. And after art school, I wanted to see the world another way besides art pretty bad. And I did some graduate work in sustainable communities, which was like an interdisciplinary kind of meal that I ate a lot from other disciplines. And I realized after about a year and a half of that if I could combine my making with that theory and that reflection, that I might be more satisfied. So I started a low residency MFA and did the terminal degree of the artist, apparently, until the PhD and such is coming up now. And I made a promise to myself, I think somewhere in grad school, that I was going to follow the work. And I wasn't sure that where it was going to take me. It hasn't taken me to the center of the art world per se, but it's taken me to some cross-cultural situations that have been really rich. So I wrote my thesis for the sustainability program from an Orthodox monastery in New Mexico. And I did a lot of land-based art out there. And then that thesis, rather than have it rot, I took the chance to work on a manuscript. I got a fellowship to a Quaker seminary and worked as the writer-in-residence there, following the work, the reflection on the art making and textual manner, right? Then a Fulbright was a really important year for myself and my family as well. My daughter was 3 months old and my son was 4. and we got back to the old country and lived in the Carpathian Mountains just a few miles from where my grandfather left. Art was what got us out there. My wife grew up in France, but psychology grants weren't getting us to Europe. It was art. Yeah.
So, you see yourself as an installation artist?
Well, I think the easiest way to frame what I do is, my practice involves installation and poetry. I like installation because, I make objects, I make sculpture, and there's a performative component to some of the work I do. And installation can hold all of that. On top of that, it can hold poetry. And I've integrated poetry into my visual physical work in the last decade in ways that have been pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
So installation is a bundle, a way of self-identification. I don't have to be a one-trick pony in that way.
Okay. Jay, how does that interdisciplinary life that you lead, do these two inform each other? I'm sure they influence each other, but do they inform each other?
Yes, I would have to say that certainly over the last decade, I would consider myself a transdisciplinarian.
What?
Transdisciplinarian, so not inter or intra or multi, which is a typical prefix to disciplinary. So transdisciplinary means that I use the methods, tools, and approach of one side of human endeavor to try to answer the questions outside. What's not exhibited here today, it's in another show at the same time. This is just a coincidence. On campus are my paintings of soils, where I take soils apart and put them up on campus, or I use acrylic paints and go straight with a realistic to impressionistic view of the soil. And that's my lab work. The lab work is where it's how I'm thinking about the interpretation of the landscape. I know I'm one of those individuals who can look at a landscape anywhere. You can show me a picture, and I can start telling you stories about it that goes way back in time. And it's not magic. It's because it's rooted in a scientific framework. Certainly, maps and other instruments of science, lab work is key. But I have found that as I'm describing how the soils of Oregon came to be, why they're here, and why they're not like other places, has come through by painting them. And so as I'm painting, I'm making notes to myself as to here's the structure, here's the story. And it's also a way to tell the story to other people who are non-scientists, and also to scientists. I painted a picture for you. This is what it is. This is my interpretation of it. Generally, it holds. And so that's using art in my science lab, painting, or at home in my studio, as a means of getting that story together. Because ultimately, that's what ends up in all sorts of ways of communicating science. It's also a way of breaking through from the written word that's in a scientific journal to a place where people can kind of get the aesthetics of the earth. So, and then the science itself is a place where informs my art. So there's an experiment running out on the table here, this platform, and the experiments really have to do with water, various chemical reactions and such that are taking place, and I will be motivating it over the next month to get it to go in certain directions, and it will inform me as to what various reactions occurring and the rate at which they are. So a lot of my paintings, big soil ones, are moving the pH back and forth. It just gives me an idea of what the mineralogy is.
I want to talk a little bit about why the two of you are sitting here together, because we didn't find you as two individuals and put you together, which is something we often do, but you came together. So how did that happen? Could any of you address that?
You could do the origin story. Sure.
So Jay and I have known each other for about a year and a month. We were at the residency in the Great Basin Desert, Playa. We each had a 4-week residency period. There were 8 of us total. I was actually collaborating with a fiction writer who I went to grad school with, and I had a pretty clear sense of what I was going to do when I was there. Share a process with fiction, a fiction writing colleague and friend, and do these land-based studies. In about the 2-week period, so about halfway through the residency, Jay and I started talking. And I was a little bit disarmed because Jay was really generous. He had gifted me with, in a really easy manner. That he said, I'd be happy to document your land-based work from an aerial perspective with my drone. And it was like, oh, you got to pay for that. And he said, no, I'm a Burning Man guy or something like that. I give gifts. And I said, well, I owe you one. And it was pretty non-obtrusive. It didn't determine what I was making. I think by the end of the residency, we had walked the playa quite a bit, talked about maybe doing something together. This one in particular is, I don't get ground footage. I don't get documentation from below because I'm reeling out baler twine. So this one is it reaches the viewer through Jay's drone, eye in the sky skill of flying that thing and creating its own narrative. Yeah.
So let's get those together and let's talk about what we can see here and what your idea behind this is, if you know.
Yeah, I hope you can see that.
So there are 3 elements that you brought, or 4, and then the piano, of course.
Yeah, piano was a given. Once we realized that, we either, I don't know what we were going to do, paint it or cover it or lean into it. And we've leaned in. So then we what was really cool was driving out the Coxby and saying, let's just find a piano and give it to the forest. And then it took about 15 minutes and Cynthia said, I have an upright. And Jay surprises me with the fact that he plays the piano. And I didn't actually know that about him. So the sound, the performative component of the piano carries over to the other space. Rope very well may. These 2 pieces, or we'll just refer to this piece here, the triptych, ponderosa pine plank, likely won't have a life in the extension, but in this space mirrors the diptych here, the oak from the Willamette Valley. This is from the White Mountains of Arizona, and that actually saw fire historically, and then I've charred and presented it at, I suppose, viewing height. I don't know, coffin viewing height or something.
And then the center, the piece in the center is again a collaboration.
I think that's a collaboration where
it is one piece.
Yeah, no, I think it is. It aims to be not only one. I mean, it does also reach out to the piano.
Yes.
So I think basically the short to meta communicate. I'm responding to Jay from above. So the rope is the component and my primary concern, and then the playa concave platform is sort of where Jay is acting, and we're kind of meeting. And we may not have the rope actually touch, but I think I'm satisfied that it holds together even now. And of course, this will evolve. Whereas these 2 pieces were more independently generated, but hold within the CORPUS project. And this may have a real important role in the actual second site. We'll have to see. And thank you all for giving us your ears.